Okay, boys, let's do 5 questions for the West playoffs. I know for the East I did every playoff team, but we're just going to do 5 for the West, which means not every team is going to get mentioned, but I might still find a way, who knows. My first question goes to the Mavericks. It's just about their defense, which has been really good lately. I'm just looking forward to seeing it in a playoff setting and how good it is in that scenario and all that stuff. Now, it should be said before I dive into it all, like Dallas, yeah, they've got a bit of a cushion outside of the play-in tournament, but they're not completely out of the waters just yet there, so they can't really relax. Lately, the Mavs starting 5 has been Gafford, PJ Washington, and Derek Jones Jr., with Luka and Kyrie, of course. Now, Derek Lively has just had an injury. He's been out the last 2 games. We'll see there. But even then, Gafford was starting over Lively for a bit. And the one game I really want to highlight for their defense was that the second one they just had against the Kings, where they were down by, I think, like 11 or 12 points early fourth quarter. They come back, and it was just solid defensive plays, man. You had, like, Derek Jones and Lively putting 2 to the ball on Fox when Alex Len was setting a screen for him. And then after that, it was like Kyrie having to close out to Harrison Barnes because Fox like rescreened with Len. Barnes swings it to Keon Ellis, and then PJ Washington closes out to him for a good contest on the 3. You had Exum when he was in there picking up De'Aaron Fox pretty much in the full court, which that's another thing. I mean, Dante Exum has definitely played a part in their defense as well. And, Derek Jones Jr. has been putting pressure on ball handlers early in possessions as well, like in the Warriors game I was watching, and they did lose that game because the Warriors defense managed to be even a little better than the Mavs one was, but like, yeah, Derek Jones Jr. was like picking up Steph early on possessions in that one. But yeah, back to the Kings game, like, after Exum is pressuring Fox, you've got like Gafford who switches onto Fox, and then Fox eventually like threw it to Sabonis, tried to run a DHO. PJ, who was switched onto Sabonis, switches onto Fox, and they just kind of like stifled the whole possession. And then the dagger was when they put 2 to the ball on Luka with PJ Washington screening for Luka, and then he got into the short roll, kicked it to Exum for a wide open 3. He made it. In the Rockets game to start out, Gafford was just playing off of Amen, which gave the Rockets offense some problems, but also you would have like PJ Washington switching on to like Fred, or they even got into like putting 2 to the ball on Jalen Green sometimes, which slowed down the Rockets a bit. Now, as I say that, and even with some of the plays where they put 2 to the ball on Fox, it feels like for the most part, they're not trying to be in heavy rotation with this defense. Most of the time, like out of the corners and out of the wings. They're doing it a little bit, like in that Warriors game, like I think Moses Moody or Wiggins made a couple of threes with Luka helping off of them. But for the most part, they're really not trying to like go crazy with rotations on their defense. They're really trying to keep it more to a switching, dropping scheme. And then if they are going to bring help, like it's going to be off of somebody that they're willing to, give up a contested 3 to, And I think this reflects in the numbers because they are giving up like among the lowest corner 3s in the league. They're giving up a lot of mid-rangers. They're not giving up a lot of shots at the rim. At least those are the numbers lately. So yeah, I mean, look, they got bigger and more athletic at the deadline, and also Kleba's back now, and he can help out defensively as well, even if he's, not a flashy guy or whatever. So if we get Luka versus the Clippers, again, that'd be wild. And I'm already imagining Derek Jones Jr. or Dante Exum picking up Harden early on possessions, and just what plays out of that, I guess. Next up, we are going to Anthony Edwards. Let's be clear, Ant is great, and the Wolves have continued rolling in spite of the cat injury. We will still see, playoff setting, what that might mean if he's not able to go or he's not 100%. Naz Reid can get buckets at that spot, of course. My question with Ant, it's just around it's still going to be the shot selection and playmaking sometimes. I want to be clear, he's made a lot of progress on this stuff, and on any given night, he can just go crazy with contested shot making and the whole thing. That being said, he is going to take his contested jumpers. He's going to get a lot of pick and roll reps, and so we're just going to have to see now. But we got to acknowledge that he's already been really good in the playoffs so far. And so, again, this is not me being like, is Ant really that dude? He is that dude. I just want to see really good defenses, game planning for him. You know what I'm talking about. To give you some recent games of his, like that Bulls game, he does pull off some plays where he like beats Alex Caruso or Ayo Dosunmu in a straight line, and then he's just getting into the teeth of the Bulls defense, and then from there, just being the athletic guy he is, finishing the whole thing, getting like a Euro step around Vooch. He also had a number of turnovers in that game that a lot of them were the product of the Bulls putting 2 to the ball and just forcing him to make that split-second decision. Now, granted, he also had Alex Caruso just on him for a lot of these, so while he was able to beat Caruso on some, he also had a number of turnovers just from Caruso directly. And not every team has that type of guy to throw at you. That said, he can still pull off great plays. Like, in the Raptors game they had recently where he rejects an empty corner pick and roll with Rudy to where he then gets to around basically the dunker spot. I believe it was Jalen McDaniels who was guarding him in the scenario, and he kind of like picks the ball up, surveys for a second, and makes a great pass to Nickeil Alexander-Walker on the opposite side of the floor for a corner 3. Like, it's in there for Ant. It's just a matter of within the difficult shots that he will take. Part of it because he can make them, of course, and also the Wolves, they need somebody to take some of those shots, and we will see with Cat. I think it's just on a night where they're not dropping as much. We just don't want him to go like overboard with those shots because when you pull up any Ant game, like you're going to see the step back, tough jumpers, and all that stuff. When things get out of control offensively for them, or they haven't gone a couple of possessions with a good shot, Mike Conley's going to get him under control. There's that. Also, just Naz Reid. There you go. Now let's go to the Clippers, and my question's going to be around James Harden. And I want to be clear, like Harden, his playmaking and his ball handling is still very valuable for this team. Okay, the amount of times where like they will run a pick and roll action with like Harden and Zubats or something, which then begins the cycle of like driving kicks or a skip to Powell, which then becomes a drive to like PG for a three, whatever. Like all that on top of like Harden finding Zoo on the roll or making the passes himself to guys, like there's still a lot of value in that. I don't want to get it twisted in that way. With that being said, you can't help but notice just some of these scoring games where he's scoring like around 10 points, and even then the efficiency is not always great. Now, he did get to over 20 points against the Nuggets in their last one, but also it took him a whole lot of shots to get there. And, I was looking at like their Kings game recently where, the Kings were putting 2 on Harden a decent amount of the times. And so, of course, you got your plays where he's just making the routine pass to keep the ball moving, but he did also have 5 turnovers. Or in the Magic game where he was, he had like Suggs or Gary Harris on him for like a good chunk of it. And there was probably like a little more switching that he was facing in the Magic game. So it's not like the driving lanes were just being conceded to him all the time. But even with that said, and with the playmaking still there, I do find myself being like, yeah, I do wish that there was like a few more just like straight line drives happening here. Sure, like you can have a time where like Sabonis is dropping back a little bit and he's going at him and then he gets like a hook pass to Zubats or whatever. Like it's still there. Like he goes at Cole Anthony a little bit in the Magic game to draw a foul. Like he can still pull off plays here and there, but I just wish that there was like a little more downhill juice just consistently happening for Harden right now, because I think that would just help the Clippers out a little bit. Now, look, about a month ago, he had a run of like 20-point games, so I don't want to act like that's not there at all, but yeah, just going into the playoffs, I'd feel a little better if Harden was just dropping like 16 a game on good efficiency as opposed to these games with lower scoring totals right now. And whether that is a stamina thing, whether it's, still him dealing with recovering from the shoulder injury from a little bit ago now, I don't know. Now we're going to go to OKC, and I would like to talk about J-Dub for a bit. No, we're not going to do the Josh Giddey teams dare him to shoot thing, which, by the way, Giddey's been like pretty okay lately. But no, let's talk J-Dub, who is actually now dealing with an ankle injury. I'm just going to guess it's not a huge deal. That Knicks game that they had, man, where, yeah, SGA had the shot late, but J-Dub went crazy in the game overall. The physical like stuff he was doing against like Josh Hart or DiVincenzo or McBride to create space to where he could get into like free throw line jumpers. Now, is he risking offensive fouls with this stuff? Yeah, and also like in a recent Pelicans game, he had one play on CJ where I was kind of surprised it wasn't an offensive foul as he kind of created space. But those types of plays on top of his catch and drives and his cuts and, when he gets the pick and roll was sprinkled in there for him as well. And with the way OKC does it to where kind of anybody can screen because they're so spaced out, like it's not like Chet is the one setting all these screens all the time, even if, of course, he can't do that. And so the question for J-Dub, really it's just I want to see him be the second option. I want to see him do this in the playoffs because, how good he is in year 2 already. It's pretty wild. And now for the last question, it's kind of just concerning everything going on in the play-in right now, which I guess it's kind of cheating because it's like 6 questions in one. So if we do get a Lakers-Warriors play-in game for 9-10, which is up in the air right now because the Lakers, they keep winning. The Warriors keep winning too. Then the Rockets have kind of fallen out. But the Kings are only a half game up on the Lakers for number 8 right now, so we'll see there. But if we do get a Lakers-Warriors play-in game, my mind just immediately goes back to AD and what he did defensively in that round too. The way that he was able to like play higher up on screens and like deflect passes with his huge arms, but also still be a presence like in the paint as well to back up on these actions or go back up if they ran another screen. It was the craziest stuff. And within that, it was like, is he guarding Draymond? Is he guarding JaMychal Green? JaMychal Green's not here anymore. The point being is Anthony Davis in a one-game thing, if it has to come to that for them versus the Warriors, just defensively, we've seen him do it against the Warriors. And then I think about how the Warriors would try to guard AD, and some of that comes down to the lineups, right? Like, obviously, Draymond's going to start, and, you could put him on AD, but with Kuminga missing games recently, although it seems like he's going to be back pretty soon here, but, like, Jackson Davis has been starting, so you could try him on AD, and then Draymond as a roamer. You could try the other way around, or when Kuminga's healthy, he might just start, and, there you go. It's just most likely going to be Draymond, unless I'm wrong about all that, in which case, don't listen to me. Do also potentially have the Pelicans versus the Kings, and the Pelicans are 4-0 versus the Kings this year with a couple of pretty big blowouts. And in pretty much each game, you had one of Zion, CJ, or Ingram going off, potentially more than one of them. However, Ingram's got the injury right now, and the language around it, this was 3 days ago. They're hopeful he can return for the regular season. So we'll see with that. I do think if the Pelicans are totally healthy, then I just don't know, even with the emergence of Keon Ellis, if the Kings have enough guys to deal with the Suns, or I don't know why I'm saying Suns, the Pelicans' three scores, and also you got Herb, who you can put on like De'Aaron Fox or put on anybody really. But we'll see with Ingram. If we do get a Kings Warriors 9-10 game, which would then lead to a Pelicans Lakers 7-8, then the conversation is probably immediately going to go to Sabonis versus the Warriors, and can he score on Draymond on the post? It's very difficult to do that. Of course, not the only way Sabonis scores, but, we saw what happened in that round one series and the way the Warriors were able to fight around the screens and, throw a wrench into the Kings' DHO actions that worked all year. Is it wrong for me to reference things that happened like a year ago when talking about potential one-game playoffs like 2 weeks from now? Then you got Phoenix, who is like kind of hovering around this right now, and I mean, there's a chance they would end up facing the Kings in a 7-8 game. I feel like Phoenix is the ultimate anything could happen team in a one-game playoff. Like, the most likely outcome is that KD and Book just make a whole bunch of pull-up jump shots, and that's the game. As far as Beal, to be clear, I could have done another question just about Bradley Beal specifically, but I don't know. I was leaning more towards the play-in. But also in a one-game thing, like, what if the Suns just had like a really, really rough turnover game? Where they get up to like 16, 17 in one game, because that can happen to them sometimes. But as of right now, they're number 6, so that's cool. I don't know. And also, I was talking about Dallas earlier, they're one game up on Phoenix, so while they do have a little more breathing room, they can't really relax.